love bringing new life into existing clothes. But how do you decide when a vintage garment should be faithfully restored or upcycled and transformed? And what is the environmental impact of saving old clothes from landfill anyway? This week, I'm bringing you a fascinating conversation with micro-business owner Debbie Murphy. Debbie explains how a youth spent sewing clothes to fit in with the style tribes of the 1980s led her to a career in costuming and vintage clothing restoration. She also shares how a health diagnosis sharpened her commitment to zero-waste practices in her business, and the study that was done on her business which reveals incredible facts about the impact she's having. If you have a love of vintage clothing, an interest in making money through sewing, or a determination to keep as much in use as possible, then stick around just a few minutes for this conversation. Welcome to Check Your Thread, the podcast that will help you sew more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 16 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge, Me Made May. But, like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis. And I'm looking at the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. And I really hope you'll join me in this journey. Hello, awesome listener. I hope you're doing well today. Thank you for choosing to hang out with me whilst you're cracking on with your day. So, public service announcement for those who are interested. This year's round of the Last Sewist Standing Challenge has kicked off. For those who don't know about this and want to hear the full explanation of what it is, check out episode 118 with the challenge's creator Lisa Bauer. But in short, it's a challenge to see how long you can last without buying sewing supplies in a bid to curb your sewing spending habits and use what you already own. I took part back in 2023 and I'm doing it again this year and I'm super excited. So that's my hopeful sustainability win for the week, pledging to not buy any new fabric until the end of the year. Let's see how far I can go. Thanks to new patrons Beck, Anila and Madeleine for signing up to support the podcast via Patreon. And thanks to existing patron Gail for upping the amount of their support. Thank you, lovelies. And to the new ones, you've joined up in good time to participate in February's mending meetups if you wish. Right, so this is quite a long episode, so I'm going to crack on and introduce what you're about to hear. Debbie was such a delight to talk to, such an interesting and experienced maker. We actually spoke for a lot longer, but I had to trim the conversation down into episode length. So do make sure you find Debbie's blog via her website, which is obviously linked in the show notes, and you can read about the project she undertook with Tamworth Castle and her stint on the repair shop. One additional thing that Debbie wanted me to mention is her incredible sounding grandchildren who attend her mending circles with her. Debbie says, Eden is a marvel. Aged only 5, she negotiates her way around a sewing machine no problem and attends all the mending circles. My other apprentices are Rudy, age 6, an expert hole finder, as well as Caden, age 3, champion cotton reel stacker. I love that so much. It's so important to normalise mending and garment care to younger generations. So it's really lovely to hear that in action. So until next week, when you'll be hearing me chat on in the virtual sewing room, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, try and do some mending in front of a child. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean. And enjoy. Thank you so much for talking to me today. And thank you for reaching out initially as well. Like, we've had a really nice back and forth, really interesting. It sounds like that you've been doing things that I kind of talk about on the podcast, but for decades anyway.
Yeah, a long time. I do feel as if, it's been a part of my life as long as I can remember, even before it was a business. And I often say to people, I was upcycling before it was in the dictionary, because I don't think upcycling was in the dictionary till 1998, if you look it up. But because there wasn't a word, you just kind of said, make new clothes out of old.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have so many questions. Let's start, if you wouldn't mind, by telling us who you are, where you are, and what fills your days.
Right. Yeah, I'm Debbie Murphy, and my business is Misfit Creations, which I've run full-time for 22 years, and I am currently sitting in what I call the nest, which is, I think I've had this workspace probably, I think it's a couple of years now, and it's, you might imagine, it's the loft, it's the top of the house, so it's a dedicated space. but I have worked all over the house, and I'm in every room. So I've really enjoyed the episodes you've done on the shared, the spaces, and I wish I'd
have... done that.
I'm talking, literally all over the house. So, but this is the nest, and this is where I work day to day.
Looks really light filled. You've got a big, beautiful window next to you there. And where is the nest? Where is your home?
In Tamworth, in Staffordshire. So it's about, if I jumped on a train, about 15 minutes from Birmingham. It's right in the heart of the Midlands.
And what fills your days? Probably a lot of things.
Well, yeah, I say full time now, and people that work from home can probably appreciate this, because it has highs and lows and pros and cons, where you can be working away and have a load of washing on the line, so you can nip out and get that in. So if an ideal day for me would be spent 100% in the nest, up here, doing what I do, which is I have probably about 500 to 600 pieces of vintage in here, as I speak, and it's a rolling stock. So I'm taking it, restoring it, and sending it back out, as well as I do private commissions as well, and other bits and pieces that that get me out and about.
Nice. I know that you've been doing so many different sustainability and textile related things over the years, and you find it hard to define, but how would you describe, if you've just met somebody, what do you tell them you are or you do?
Well, I restore vintage clothing. As you can imagine, again, when I tell people that I do that, I've over the years got a lot of requests for, can you put a zip in my trousers? Can you turn my trousers up?
That's going to be the next question, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say I do. I specialise in vintage clothing. So I do on occasion take on what we term, alterations, but I'll kind of whisper it to people, for a friend, because I hate clothing to go to waste. But generally I restore, and I specialise in 1960s to 1980s, I'd say, is the majority.
Yeah.
And it comes in all shapes and forms.
So where does it come from? How does it reach you?
Well, I've worked with a vintage dealer for many years, because before this I was a costumier. So I had vintage clothing that I used to get to dress people in the entertainment industry. But so the vintage connection came probably, 20 plus years ago. What I discovered was a lot of the clothing that I got wasn't fit for use. So I would have to repair it, and in some cases completely refashion, because bands would say, I want to look like, they'd be scar bands saying they want to look like the Specials, and then they'd put the clothes on and be horrified because it didn't look like they'd walked out of Top Man. So I'd have to make them look like they wanted to look. And the dealer that I've worked with then said, well, if you want more of this, and produced sacks, because he's collected for probably over 60 years.
Wow.
So the stock that I get has often been in storage for sometimes 50 or 60 years. And it's stuff that just needs repairing. And it wouldn't ultimately go to landfill because it's not wearable.
Yeah. So are you requesting certain items, based on demand from your customers, or are you just receiving and then you need to find, how does it then get passed on once you've restored it?
Right. Well, I don't actually do as much anyway, not as much the costuming side, because the nature of my business changed to predominantly restoration. So now everything that I restore, I sell. So I sell online, or on occasion I'll do, vintage fairs and, I don't know, events, not so much festivals now, because it's hard work. And vintage clothing, when you're setting it up for sale physically, is really heavy. So I prefer selling online. And people do contact me and say, have you got, because I've had customers for many years, so they know me and they'll ask me for specific items. And 9 times out of 10, I've got it in a sack somewhere that I've not even opened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So are you then requesting those items from the vintage dealer, or it's like, what have I got here?
Firstly, what have I got here? Because there's, as I've said, it's a huge amount of stock. I've got probably 20 or 30 works in progress at a time, because
Really?
you look at something and you think, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, and I put it to one side, then I take something else out. But it's also great because I can have a route round and think, oh wow, I forgot about that. So yeah, first what I've got, and then I'll put the feelers out. And there's 2 or 3 people that will now send me. They know that this is my specialism, so a couple of vintage shops that will get clothing they can't sell that will send it my way.
Do you have any favourite or least favourite tasks, like when you get sent a garment? Like what are the ones that you then put back again, you think, I'm going to leave that for a while? Or what are the ones like, I'm going to get this done now?
I don't like chiffon. I don't like...
I don't blame you.
Anything that's really lightweight, and, you've got to faff about with bridal and special occasion wear. I have worked with it. I've made countless prom dresses and things in my time, and wedding dresses for my own girls. But yeah, I'm not keen. And again, when people have said, can you just, I don't know about other dressmakers, that's the word you just loathe. Can you just,
But it was that easy, you could do it.
It's just the hem, and then you get this
multi-layered chiffon
that's got about 6 layers of hem. So they're my least favourite, definitely.
Yeah. Well, what's your favourite tasks to tackle?
Oh, I suppose because I am a refashioner. It is when I'll save something if I absolutely can. I will save it whichever way I can. But it's the challenge of taking something that looks completely unwearable and turning it into something else, and it's almost a challenge as well to see how many things you can get out of one garment.
Oh, can you give me some examples of like how you've approached that before?
I get a lot of my stock is synthetic, a lot of polyester, and I know there's a lot of debate about natural fibres, versus synthetics, but I can tell you from experience, and I've got the statistics to show in my stock, that the majority of what I get from those decades is either mixed polyester and cotton, or natural fibres, or 100%, acrylics and polyesters. And they need to keep going. They're here. They're not going to go away. They're like, they're shouting to you, look, I look fantastic. Yeah. So I have taken, if you can imagine, 1970s maxi dresses that have got reams of, crimpling or whatever, and turn them into, I think I managed a jumpsuit with other bits of fabric. So a track top kind of hoodie and a skirt, a bag. I can't think now, but about 6 things, because it was A-line maxi dress.
So in that sense, were you kind of using it as fabric as such?
Yes.
Or were you incorporating some of the original elements of the design?
It depends. That one had everything from cigarette burns, yes, wine stains.
It had a life, by the sounds of things.
This is it. It had a life. I've got different baskets of things. So I'll have a basket of collars and a basket of cuffs and a basket of, I will divide. So I'll take something apart. And as I've said, when my business sort of focused more on refashioning, I went zero waste in 2014. So every single part of every single garment is here somewhere in some guise, which is why I can find something I've worked on 10 years ago, part of it anyway, and pop it in something else.
Oh, that's amazing. So you don't have much in the way of textile waste to then be responsible for?
No, I've got different bins around me as well. I've got, one for just threads and another, bigger pieces, smaller pieces. I just know where things go,
Yeah.
And I pop them into...
Got a system in the nest.
into the bin, and then have a rummage around when I need
What happens to the really scrappy, really little bits and the threads and things like that?
Stuffing. I've had in the past I've had a couple of people who have requested those bits and pieces. Unfortunately, the one lady that used to has gone out of business now, but she used to use really small pieces in jewellery, tiny little pieces, and I'd send her big bags full. So if any of your listeners want tiny pieces of discarded fabric, then yeah, there's loads. But if not,
I think a lot of my listeners have their own.
Yes, yeah.
I think we're all looking for the unicorn of somebody who wants someone else scraps.
Well, I think this lady liked them because there's a lot of, it's all vintage, so there's a lot of garish prints, is what I can say in there.
Oh, fascinating. Oh, that's so interesting. So do you have a favourite decade of clothing either to work on, or I'm imagining that there's some vintage in your wardrobe as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, my favourite decade is the 1960s to work on. When I'm looking at a garment and almost having to piece it together or take it apart, whichever way, then you've got the history there, you've got the whole story. You've often, I'll think, well, they've gone out, they've sourced this fabric. Sometimes you can tell it's a curtain. I found like where header tape's been attached, that sort of thing. You'll see where they've repaired.
I was going to say, can you see some of like historic men sometimes when you're working garments?
And it's lovely because the stitches. I mean, I love when I find things like herringbone stitch. Where the hem's been so professionally done, but and also where you've seen that people have taken something in and let it out again or added a piece, because what I think we have to realise is this is nothing new. People, this is what they did day to day. They wanted a dress and they would make it. So in the 1960s, I'm not short of homemade and often, patterned as well. Because I get a few things that I've had as well. The patterns that newspaper patterns and things like that have come along in the bags.
Oh, nice! That were used to create that garment.
Yes, yeah,
together. Oh, that's so lovely. I remember my mum was always saying that in the 60s, because she was a teenager in the 60s, that if they wanted to go out of an evening, they'd have to go down the market in the morning or like Saturday morning, go and get a couple of yards of fabric, go home, make it, and then ready to wear it that evening, because like fast fashion wasn't a thing. Ready to wear clothing was expensive, wasn't it?
Was, yeah, and there was far more value placed on our clothes.
Yeah, and we didn't have so many.
Yeah, yes.
So when you are like doing a restoration of a piece, what kind of materials are you using? Are you using kind of more vintage fastenings? Are you using modern ones that you've bought recently? What threads are you using?
It's wherever possible I use vintage. I have a huge, I think people are envying my button box. It's like a bin full of vintage buttons. And fastenings, zippers, I've got, again, a huge box of those. So
is that because you've removed them from other garments?
Yeah. So I'll always look to that before. I haven't bought any fabric. I think I'm on my 4th year now. I've not bought any fabric, which is, I used to. It's very difficult, isn't it? I avoid fabric shops.
So you love sewing and you love textiles.
But I will buy all my haberdashery second-hand. So I'll go on eBay, and when someone's having a de-stash, or if you search for vintage sewing basket, that's a great one, because very often they come complete with the threads and all the notions, all the bits and pieces inside. So I've got collections that I pick from. I would say it's normally evident that I've done something to, especially when I'm refashioning, but I like to think that it's all within the same era.
So when you say refashioning, like what would you do? Can you give me some examples of refashions that you've done? And when do you decide to kind of restore and retain its original look compared to kind of reworking something and giving it an alternative look?
So it's a dilemma. If at all possible, it's the rule of, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Right.
So if something comes to me and it's a case of replacing buttons, etc., then it's straightforward. I've had 1960s crimpling dresses are a great one. They'll come in and they're panelled, you might get an A-line panelled dress and it looks great. And as soon as you sort of pick it up and start to move it about, it starts to come apart, and they're like jigsaws. So I literally have to go through every piece and reattach and strengthen the seams. So where possible, I'll put it back together, or as close as I can to its original. But refashioning would be something that is damaged in a way that I can't, like the cigarette burnt dress, or there's often stains are very difficult because, if someone spills something, it generally starts at the neckline, and you think, how did you manage that? Little splash.
Especially if they did it 50 years ago.
And it'll be all the way down to the hem. And you think, there's no way. That's when I take them apart and put them in their pieces. Yeah. Take out what can't be used, the burns, the stains, the bits that are completely beyond use. And then, sit and look at it for sometimes weeks until it appears. Sometimes I will put it on social media and ask people, what do you think? Because that, what I do is the physical sewing side of things, but somebody somewhere can say, I'll tell you what I do, and if it's a good idea, then I'll say thank you very much.
I love that. Yeah. Crowdsource the idea.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then do you sell those on your website as well?
I
those
do,
refashioned pieces alongside the vintage?
Yes.
The kind of restored vintage?
Yes.
Cool. What's a recent refashion you created, or something you're working on currently?
Well, I've got a work in progress that's hanging here. I do a lot of moths. I mean, moths are awful little things, aren't they? And I've got a dress here that I did a moth mend, embroidering little moths over each of the holes.
Funny.
Which
amazing.
I thought, there's 5 or 6. And I think I'm up to 23.
Oh,
23
no.
moths, I know.
And you're committed now?
Yeah, it's ready for sale. I mean, that's more, I suppose, I don't know what you would call that, because refashioning, I tend to see, as when I've taken something apart, put it back together.
I guess there's more of a repair and embellishment, possibly.
Yeah, but refashioning, I have, shirts. I'm always, because I've got dozens and dozens, I think I've got about 62 at my last count, vintage shirts in a basket. So they're great to refashion because you can swap the collars about, change the plackets on the front, crop them, gather them in places. So shirts are a great refashion. Yeah, a lot of it though tends to be vintage dresses that, a dress might become a pinafore, or I get commission work that comes in. There's one lady that buys vintage dresses. She wants them in as 2 pieces. Yeah, I'll make a skirt and a top, and sometimes hair accessories as well. So that's the kind of thing where somebody else will see something, they'll buy something and say, I love this, I love the print, I don't like how it looks on me, can you make it into this and this?
So are these sometimes these people that would like, for example, a dress into a 2-piece, are those people that you kind of meet in real life and you're taking their measurements, or you're having fittings, or is this done like online?
Online. I will work remotely with people overseas as well, and they'll send me their measurements. It's postal. They'll send me whatever they've got, and I'll do what I do, and then I'll send it back.
Yeah. So how did you learn to mend and restore clothes? You were saying you were upcycling before upcycling even begun. How did it all start for you?
Well, I was a child of the 60s. I grew up in the 70s, and by the 80s was already, I was going out, and that was, my teenage years. And I feel quite fortunate to have had those years during a time when fashion was almost sort of tribes. We had mods and rockers and new romantics. I mean, punks prior to that, the post-punk era. You could define somebody by, their taste in music, what they wore. It was all out there. And, there was a lot of DIY fashion. I was a huge fan of Malcolm McLaren. So I watched an awful lot of what he did. I know, Vivienne Westwood was there too. But for me, Malcolm McLaren was this, I don't know, he just had this way of taking clothes and turning them into something else. So that's where it began for me, because I was going already when I was very young. I remember going to jumble sales and bringing things back and my mum throwing them up the garden. What is this? It was my own style first that I was experimenting with. I'd go and get in charity shops then. I suppose we didn't say, I don't know, vintage clothing. It was old clothes. I remember wanting to get 1960s suits, two-piece suits to go to mod nights in. And then the punk and post-punk, new romantic, turning clothes, putting big ruffles on the front of blouses. And so a lot of it was, I would say, self-taught, but in as much as I had a grounding in that from school, because we were taught to sew in school. We had the bare bones of it anyway, so I would know how to approach something. And then as time went on, when I got married and had children, I went to a tailoring course at college. I was very fortunate because the teacher was a couturier, had been, and just had some fantastic lessons in how to make clothes and finish clothes more so. And continued from then. So that was when I'd started to actually make clothes for my children. It was trial and error and experimental, but very often using old clothes. And because I rewear and I don't buy clothes, I've got clothes from when I was a teenager still. Not all of them I can wear, some of the jackets. So I'm still wearing clothes that I've had for a very long time. So, and the same with dresses and things like that I keep. I actually remake some of the things that I've made from scratch.
Do you have any recommendations for people who are new to either kind of restoring if they've got some pieces that are quite old, or to refashioning? Have you got any advice?
I think often it depends on your skill level, but I would say throw the patterns out. Work using existing clothing, so laying over. If you've got your own style, use that. And if you've got a mannequin, brilliant. Pin it on and look at it. Give it time. Don't just do it. Don't just take the scissors to something. Give it time to develop and look at what else is in your wardrobe as well, because you can use things from other pieces or things that you've put to one side or things that you're not going to wear again. It's great mixing and matching with refashioning. I mean, my business name is Misfit, and that was because I would take one thing and, everything was one-off. My mantra and my business, what do you call that, like a tagline, from day one was there's nothing new under the sun. It's all been done before. And if you approach it like that and think, well, it's going to be, part of this will be out there somewhere, just look at it and put it together like a jigsaw. I don't know if that makes sense. The possibilities then are there. And you're not trying to make something that somebody else has patterned. Definitely don't take the scissors to anything straight away. Look at it and lay it out. I think that with vintage clothing especially, you think this has been around in some instances for 60, 70, 80 years. Give it a breather, give it a chance. I don't like the upcycling or refashioning trend that is just there to buy something, cut it up. You've always got to ask, well, what's going to happen with the other bit? Can I make a pocket with it? Can I make something? Can I make accessories with it? Look at the whole thing before you even unpick it, maybe, before you start snipping away. Unpick the separate pieces and lay them out and see what you can do with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or do you think you feel we've covered?
Oh, if we could we mention Ebury, because that was quite the Aston University.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Did I put that on? Yeah, I went to Aston University. It was 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember. And part of the university there is the Energy and Bioproducts Research Institute. Now, without going into, because there's a lot of factual and statistical detail here that I could go into, but they, in the broadest sense, take things and make other things from them. So things like businesses, they'll take the waste product and turn it into something else. And my business was not generally what they would have looked at, but they did. And they made this case study on my business. What they did was an overview of the environmental impact of my business as a vintage clothing business. So a life cycle assessment that took what I do from the cradle to the grave as far as possible. And from that, they established that my business saves approximately, it's 2.99 something, so approximately 3 tonnes of CO2 equivalent every year from doing what I do. Amazing. And ultimately what I wanted to come from this, to show people when they buy a piece of vintage or they buy something that's been refashioned or reworked, what that actually means to the environment, because people don't get that, do they? They don't, when they pick something up, they don't know exactly what that item of clothing, what it's taken out. And the case study was quite groundbreaking. So it's another thing I'm very, very proud of. And they went through every activity that I do in here, in the nest. We went through every item of clothing, what the fibres were, what it was made of, what I did to it, what machinery I used, how much it weighed, where it went in the world, the postage, everything. The laundering, because obviously everything's line dried, don't tumble dry anything. I discovered things that I didn't know. So the worst thing in my business was the ironing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was where a lot of the energy was being lost.
Can you get energy efficient irons? I wonder.
You can. I mean, they gave me recommendations, and amongst the recommendations was, to not to use the iron. To use it as little as possible. It's for clothing as well, the damage that it causes, that heat, that the damage the iron causes. And it's another thing that I find often on polyester clothes, there's a great big iron burn.
We've all done it.
So they also said, they talked to me about a take-back scheme. It was more to do with the energy, was looking for the best energy provider. Try and switch energy providers if possible. Yeah. There is a case study, like a little booklet that you can get when you go online. I think I've put that on my website as well. That's a case study, a practical help for businesses. So this is vintage clothing businesses. And there is also a bigger document, if you are really interested, that you can download that speaks about all of the elements of my business and the waste and how to save that and how to harness everything.
Fascinating. Could you send me the link to that, and then I'll make sure I've put that in the show notes as well? That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is, because it's, I can't understand all of it. I will be honest, scientists have produced this and there's a lot of statistical information, but there are things like pie charts, like graphs. So for me, I can look at it and I can tell you that 43% of my stock is mixed synthetic and natural fibre, but then 26 is just synthetic, 26% of my stock.
So where are they using this data? Apart from obviously to pass on to you as well, where is this data being used?
I believe it's being used in educational facilities. So within the university, I've gone into the university myself. This is Aston University, and I run a mending circle as well.
Right.
And I've done mending circles inside the university. It's demonstrating to the students there and the reporters as well how important this is. There have been at the mending circles, because I run them locally, but at the university one, there were lecturers, and they're really these sort of very educated lecturers sitting down to mend with me, who had never, hadn't threaded a needle before, you look at it, people think, again, it's that word, it's only this. it's just that. But it isn't. It's far more than that. And when people say, and what do I need? I haven't got time. And I'll tell you what you need. You need a needle and thread. That's it. I haven't got time. Sit on the train when you're going to work then and do it.
Yeah. Have you got time to scroll your phone? Yes, you do. You've got time for this.
Yeah. So it's those little things that it passes on as well, that this isn't beyond everybody's reach.
Yeah.
And that sewing and mending, in my opinion, is like a signature. We've all got one. So, some are, very flamboyant and very, elaborate, and some aren't. But if you've put your signature on a piece of clothing, then you're winning, and so's the environment. It's that simple to me.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so the mending circle is only a few of us, and I get people on social media around the world who'll say, I'd love if I lived closer, we'd come to the mending circle, we'd love to do something like this. I tell you what, Zoe, sometimes this week there were 3 of us, 3 people, and I do all the advertising, all the social media.
But also, those people, it's not hard to start your own. Literally you, and there's 3 of you, I'm sure that person could find at least one other person to sit with. That's a mending circle.
Yeah.
It's replicable in other places.
Yes, yeah. I think there have been, actually. I know. There's a couple of people have contacted me and said, "Do you mind if we use the same name?" You think, "Well, no. Call it what you like. Call it mending circle. Call it what you like. It's brilliant. They're spreading." But there's the lady Susie Ellis. I think she's Tales and Textiles. She started this group, Mend and Make Friends. And we have a regular now online meetings, and it's just a catch up. It's just like-minded people, and we meet online, and often I'll be there saying, and I did another mending circle, and hardly anybody turned up, But you can kind of compare notes and mends, and it's wonderful. There's a really vibrant mending circle.
We just need more. We just need more opportunities to get together and mend, don't we?
Yeah. But if we can do it online, then why not?
Well, with the patrons of the Check Your Thread podcast, we have 2 mending meetups a month that take place via Zoom at different time zones, so we can get together and work on some mends, and that's really nice. We had one yesterday morning. Once again, there's only 3 of us. Usually it's more, but it was great. Sorted out my pajamas, somebody sorted out their kids' onesie, and somebody else sorted out some Christmas decorations, so it was fantastic. And I would have put those off, those pajamas, but it's nice having that thing right, in my calendar, this is when a mend is going to happen. This is my opportunity to do some mending, isn't it? Because, as you say, some people are like, oh, do I have time? It's like, well, schedule it if you have to, because then you've got that garment in use again, or whatever the item is.
It's for me, because I'm doing it all of the time. It's a good job. I enjoy it, really, isn't it? I do it as a business. I suppose it's slightly different. It's all right. Me, so, I'm sitting in a dedicated space.
Yeah, and you've got your stuff there.
With machinery around me, and it's easy for me to say, I suppose. But it's when excuses are made that I say, get a needle and a thread. That's it. That's all you need. And
if you've got time to scroll, you've got time to sew a button on.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And it's that you can't as well get away from the therapeutic benefits of that. It helps, doesn't it? It
really does. Well, you've proved it. You've got charts to show it helps in the environment, and then that's going to have a knock-on effect to your well-being, to your your sense of self. Surely,
it's that thing that it goes from your head through and out your hands. Those creative ideas, and obviously I can eulogise about mending forever, but I've been doing it for a very long time. I mentioned the benefits as well, the personal benefits. Because I was a costumier predominantly, as I said, and I was providing costume for the entertainment industry and drag queens and all the ridiculousness that went with it. And then in 2013, everything was at its height. I was doing clothes show lives and big exhibitions. It was my business was kind of on the up, and it was all going well. And then in 2013, overnight, I got kidney cancer, but it was a real sudden. It was literally got up in the morning and dropped. And there was two ambulances, one to one place, then to another house. Anyway, it just went out the window.
Oh my goodness.
And it's not, you can't, I had this thing in my head that you can't, I can't do this anymore.
Oh.
It messes with your head a bit anyway. And I deleted all social media. So in 2013, when everything was up, I just went, that's it. And I sold all my stock, sold all the vintage, sold everything I'd made, all the makes, everything, sold it to a shop in London. And then for 12 months, I didn't come up here, I didn't go in, didn't get the sewing machine out. And I made a hospital gown. This is very briefly. From a vintage pattern, because you can see your bum and everything and the flap open. And I did this 3-armed hospital gown I designed because I was so fed up of going everywhere and flashing. So I made that, patented it. It kind of, in hospitals, people were going, you should do something with that. So I got sewing again through a hospital gown. Then COVID happened. Then somebody stole the design, even though I patented it. So it's all in, the whole other story. But then back then, I'd realised I was sewing again, and the fashion industry was so superficial to me then. That's when I stopped. I stopped buying. I did, no new clothes since then. Everything. Although I had a recreate range before then,
yeah,
and I was doing, and the vintage and that, I was still costuming. So that's when it really stopped for me, and I said, okay, no more of that. That was the zero waste start of everything. So yeah, it wasn't just about the environment, it was myself thinking, this is ridiculous, why am I doing this? I mean, there's a place for everything, I know, but that was my moment.
Wow,
of
you had that shift of perspective.
Yeah, it was a totally different perspective. And that's why, although my business carried on, it carried on in one focus.
Yeah, some people might relate to that experience, and also to that, I don't know, a shift of perspective that happens from when something major occurs, and that how you've embraced it and you've done it in such a positive way, that you've like, refocused in such a positive way that you haven't lost the things that you love, like the sewing and the joy of clothing, but you've channeled it in this really positive, right? No, well, I'm going to do this in a zero waste way. I'm going to do this where I'm reducing waste, not creating it and stuff. This
has and still does save me. This is why I say my favourite place. I sit up here, and you're making a difference, but it's not just the difference, the physical difference that you're sending clothes back out there. You're thinking, I think this feels good. This feels right. This is what I'm meant to be doing. And even, if the business sort of falters, I'll still do it because it feels good and it's right. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, Debbie. Thank you for sharing with me all your experiences and experience. I'm so grateful.
No, thank you. I was so excited to come on. I'm such a big fan. I really am. I just love it. You have provided me with so much information. Your listeners, your podcasts have. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much for reaching out. So where can people find you if they'd like to see your creations and keep up with what you're up to?
My business is Misfit Creations. It's Misfit with a double S. 2 S's, misfitcreations.com. That's my website. And everything else, all the socials, I am at Misfit Creates.
Perfect. I'll put all those links in the show notes. Brilliant. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!